Okay, sure.
Currently, what you are seeking.
Someone's voice is disturbing, Emmanuel.
Okay. Is anybody on the call who is not muted?
Okay, first I'll mute. Naveen, you just introduce yourself.
Well, I'm muted. Actually, I'm in a mute. So I guess now voice is clear.
Yeah. How
So
about now?
so
Is everybody able to hear clearly without any
yeah,
issues?
yeah. Now no issues. I
Yes.
can able to hear.
Yeah.
Okay. 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 Sure. We can start now.
Okay, let me start. I am Bharat. I'm working for SAP Labs in Bangalore.
Okay.
Overall, I have 7.5 years of experience. In that,
Okay.
I could say I have different areas of security. I have worked for last 5 years. First, earlier I started my career as a .NET developer. First 3 years. After 5 years, I am more into the security domain.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Bharat.
Okay, I'm Naveen. Actually, I've been working in a security domain in Tech Mahindra. So I've been handling a firewall related thing. So VAPT is something new to me, and I am holding overall 6 years experience in IT field.
Okay. And Bharat, and your current designation or the role which you're working in?
The present designation is more about a cybersecurity researcher.
Okay.
Yeah, now, a little of pen testing I'll do. Nothing in the network side, only in the web application and along with that, any new product comes, I'll just sit for the architecture discussions. Are you audible?
Okay. Thank you. Sorry, I was muted the
Okay,
call. Okay.
fine.
Let me introduce about me. I am Emmanuel. I've been working in the industry for past 4 months. So I have experience in VAPT, risk and compliance, and audit as well. And I am currently working in EY as a part of risk advisory, where I will be handling both audit and cybersecurity related details.
Great. Yeah.
Once again, just getting it. Okay, so before I begin the VAPT class or the session, so I just want to tell you what VAPT is all about and why we are doing this activity. Okay, so am I audible? How both of you are able to hear me?
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you. So we have the course content. May I know if you have gone through the course content before?
World one. Yes. We
Okay,
had. Yeah.
no problem. So before I give you the description about the course content, I'll just tell you what is vulnerability assessment that we are trying to do, and what happens in a later part, which is a penetration testing activity. All right. Okay. So either you could, when I'm interacting, if you're not able to understand at any point in time, you can just let me know, and you can stop me also, so that I could reiterate myself, and so I can make myself clear as well. Okay.
Okay.
So, according to you, because since I want this session to be a little bit of interactive, and since you're all experienced in the industry as well, in the security, may I know what you think about vulnerability? When I say vulnerability, what would come into your thing that describes a vulnerability?
Any weakness in the application that is not intended or known by the developers earlier.
Okay, that's good. So let me put it this way. So I think you might have seen a picture. Let me show it on the screen. Perhaps it will make better sense. So there are there are three terms we describe in vulnerability. That is vulnerability, risk, as well as threat. Okay. So consider you have a room. Okay. And in that room you have all the most precious jewels that you have in home, and you for that room what you place is a lock, and there is a thief who's going to steal it. So this I'm just saying because I'm not able to get the picture for you. So I'm just reiterating. So let me know if you're able to easily understand and imagine what I'm trying to say. So if you have all the critical things, the jewels, we call that as an asset, because these jewels are the precious one which you want to protect. Am I right? So after this, you have an enclosed room with a single door, which is having a lock. So what this is doing, this is actually protecting your asset. And this door, the lock, which is the critical part which actually encloses everything and which is securing it, which is called a control. Okay. Now there is a thief. His intention is to go ahead and steal the jewels. So in this entire story, what is a threat? The threat is the thief who wants to steal. And what's his motive or the risk that you have here is the risk is the jewels getting stolen. Okay, when I'm saying about risk, it's about what happens later when he steals. Okay, and what is a threat or a vulnerability in this particular part? The vulnerability is the weakness of the lock. For example, if the lock is broken or the lock is malfunctioned, or if the door is not locked properly, this is, we call it as a vulnerability. Okay, so asset is a critical or the crown jewel, we say it in the industry, which is highly important to protect. You might have a lot of controls. For example, for network, you might have firewall. For endpoint system, you might have an antivirus. So these are all controls which is trying to protect an asset. Now, the weakness is any bug or an issue which will help a threat, such as a thief, to exploit it or exploit the weakness and get into the system. Here, the thief is trying to get inside the room by exploiting the weakness in the lock to steal the jewels. So, is this example able to give you a clear picture of how it, what is the threat, what is the risk, what is the vulnerability?
Yeah, yeah, I'm
Okay.
already got it. Yeah.
So when I say vulnerability, vulnerability is a weakness that will give, when it is exploited, it will give away the critical jewels or something that is most precious to secure. There are different definitions that you can have for the vulnerability, risk, and threat, but you can think of this example all the time, which will give you a clear picture what you're trying to look into. And give me a moment and I'll open it in the screen so that I could take you through the course content in the meantime. Let me share the screen. Let me know if you're able to see my screen.
Okay.
Is it visible now?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Okay. This is your content. Okay. In the first phase, which is today, all we are looking into the overview of vulnerability assessment, penetration testing, why they do the penetration testing, and for what it is required. What is an offensive and defensive phase of penetration testing, and we'll see some of the test cases, or I'll show you a couple of examples on how this vulnerabilities and what are the things that is get exploited. and how to identify weakness using vulnerability assessment tools, and what is a CVE or CVSS scoring, and all the details. Okay, now I'll just show you a couple of things so that you can understanding what is penetration testing. So every system or every software that they develop, there is something called a development phase and a testing phase. So you might have seen in the software development lifecycle also there has plan, develop, test, and deploy. So this is a similar task. So what happens is that when you develop a product or a software, you will not be able to identify all the issues in the initial phase, because the developer's intention is to only sell or get the product out to the testing and deploy as soon as possible. So what happens in this case is that when you are developing the product, they will not be aware of all the issues that they might face. So when in the testing phase, when they go and reach to the testing phase, what happens is that they will do the functionality testing of the product. That means whether if you have a requirement, for example, when you click on a button, it should function so and so, or it should generate so and so results. Okay, when the testing phase, they're only going to check whether it's producing the exact results as they intended to, but they'll not be looking into the security flaws that is existing in the application. So that was in the traditional phase where the security was not given that much importance. All these flaws were in all the softwares or operating systems or anything that you generate. So these weaknesses does exist in all the coding level to the finished products also. So some of the vulnerabilities would look like, I'll show you a couple of examples. So how many of you, or you might have seen that you might be receiving patches. So whenever we are buying a product, for example, if you take a Microsoft Office solution, or it might be a Windows operating system, or even a phone, which is an Android or an iOS, Apple, which you're using, you might be seeing every now and then there will be patches that is released for your devices. So what it says is there are vulnerabilities with respect to your operating system or an application, which will be fixed periodically. Why they are getting fixed? Because each and every version of an application might have some the definitions. Okay, I'm just zooming in. So if you see, CV is a common vulnerability enumeration and common vulnerability scoring system. And this is a website called securitydatabase.com, where we'll be finding different vulnerabilities with respect to different products. So I'll just show you a couple of vulnerability, and I'll say why this is how it works and all the details, so you will have a clear picture. So let me show you one of things. In the meantime, so if you see, this is a vulnerability which is in one of the windows. Okay, so what happens here is that, okay, give me a minute. Okay, see, Microsoft has this feature called Microsoft Security Bulletins. So whenever they have a product or a version of the operating system released, they also do the security testing part. So when they do the security testing part, there are different kinds of vulnerabilities they try to find out and see if that can be remediated. Once identified the vulnerability and there has been a solution, it will be released in the terms of security bulletin so that they can access that information and they can provide a patch. So these vulnerabilities might not be identified only from the Microsoft testers. There is something called, there are penetration testers or bug bounty hunters or also security researchers who would be looking for all these kind of bugs or issues in a certain product. So once they get that product and once they have this vulnerability, if it is not fixed in time, we call it as a zero-day vulnerability. That means a vulnerability which has no solution but has been identified. But most of the vulnerabilities, once it is identified, you would have seen patches rolling out from Microsoft, if it is a Microsoft product or any other vendor for that matter. So there is a normal vulnerability and there is a different vulnerability which is called like a zero-day vulnerability, which never has a patch or a solution which can be fixed, which is always an existing or a blind spot, we can say, for that. So I'm sorry that this website is not working. Just give me a minute. Let me open this up for you. Okay, are you able to see my screen now?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is a website called securitydatabase.com, which will have the collection of all the vulnerabilities with different products. So when I say different products, it's from different manufacturers. If you see Cisco and Debian is the manufacturer of, it's a flavor of Linux which they have. They have Red Hat, they have Ubuntu, they have VMware, and they have other, even HP devices. And these are all called CVIDs. So once you find a vulnerability, if they are reporting them to authorized vendor, and they gonna capture a CVID which will get registered saying that there is a particular weakness in the system and this is the method that can be exploited to it. And based on these CVIDs, the patches should be released further. So I'm not able to open the Microsoft website for some reason, but actually Microsoft will show in detail. Once I get that, I will be able to explain you more in depth. But this is how ideally it looks like. So you can try from your systems also. You can go to the securitydatabase.com dashboard and you can view the different vendors, their vulnerabilities and patches. So if you see, there are like 12,939 vulnerabilities that was reported by 2015, that is 8th month. And how many patches you have seen so far? Like 10,196. That means for the remaining 2,939 similar vulnerabilities, there has been no patch released. That means they are the weaknesses that still exist in the system, and it might be supported by some compensatory controls. I'll tell you about what compensatory control is later, but this will give you an idea like how many vulnerabilities you can find in a year and how many things are getting patched, and there are still a lot of gap that is left out which is unpatched, that will help you to exploit those situations. Let me pick a vendor for you. So here I am showing you the Microsoft bulletin. The one I was trying to find out was MS08067. So I'm just checking through that. You see this? So this vulnerability was reported on the date 2008, and it was a Microsoft which will allow a server cloud could allow remote code execution. So it will give you the details such as scoring system and everything. Okay. So when there is something called CVSS score and the score matrix. Okay, there is a scoring system. So basically anything with a score 10 is critical. Anything which is 9 to 7 is high, and 7 to 5 is medium, and anything below that is low. So what happens is that when you're trying to find a vulnerability and exploit, the critical ones are of a higher impact. That means they might either give you direct exploitation by gaining access to certain resources. So what do you think a hacker's mind would be when he's trying to exploit a system? What kind of information is looking? Most of the times it might be sensitive information or a customer information in a company. So I'll give an example. From industry to industry it may change. So if it is a banking company or it is a company which holds credit card information of the customer, the hacker's mind would be to target that information which is of more valuable to him in that industry. So if I'm targeting an SBI or any other bank, or for that any other companies that might be supplying credit cards or working with the credit cards, my intention is to steal that credit card information. If it is a company which holds lots of customer information, my target or a hacker's target would be to fetch the customer information. So you might have seen a lot of regulations in terms of GDPR, and in Dubai they have their own data protection law. In Singapore they have the data protection law, and Australia has one, and India is also going to get one. Why do you think they're giving so much importance to data? Is that nowadays data has become very valuable, and this has to be protected at very high cost. And the fines that are given for these kind of data breaches is way too high. You might be reading in the news that certain data breaches cost millions of dollars. For example, GDPR says if you have a data breach, based on the number of records that are leaked, either you would be charged 20 million or 4% of your annual turnover. So whichever is highest. So looking at this, there are big numbers to face, and that's why companies invest nowadays more into cybersecurity to have the controls, have the penetration testers to work on, find the weaknesses in their system and environment and infrastructure as well, so that they could put appropriate controls and minimize the risk of getting a data theft happening from their environment. Now, if you see any vulnerability that says risk score of C basis 10, that means it has a very higher impact or chances of getting exploited as well and leaking the information also.
Emmanuel, I have a doubt. Like, let's
Yes.
say if we find a few websites that privilege escalation, I can get into anyone's account and I can view. So that those kind of vulnerabilities, if I find, so
Mm-hmm.
how to file a complaint or case against that company?
Ah, no. Okay. See, you have different process for that. If you have any vulnerability found, you can't just complain to the company. All right. So take it in the different steps. For this steps, I'll tell you this. Have you gone through a bug bounty program where you see there will be bug crowd or hacker one, websites? Have you enrolled into them?
Yeah, I got it. Like, see, the
Okay.
anyway,
One way
in
is
case,
that.
yeah,
I'm saying
okay.
one way is that, but if there's not a regular bug bounty, and still if you have find an issue, you can still contact the support or the respective company and say you have so and so vulnerability in your environment and you need to fix it. Okay, it's similar to bug bounty, but if you want to go to media and you want to take a big name out of it, it's your personal choice. We don't recommend that usually because companies can take it seriously and they can sue you also in return.
Okay.
Unless we don't take permission from the company, we should never go public or misuse that information because till then it is unethical. So most of them, what they do is they report to the company, they take the bounty without even, if it is a very critical vulnerability, as you said, and nobody has found it out yet, and you were the first person to find it, you report it, the company would definitely appreciate you, and also you can claim the name for it. You can register in the your vulnerability in the CVA by having your score calculated and uploading as a new CVA ID. There are a lot of huge process that goes through that. And if the company recognizes that you're the first person ever to find it out. But think in this way, if you have found and you want to raise a complaint, you can't raise a complaint on the company because it's a flaw which the company doesn't know, right? Because they are saying that they have so many controls in place, but still somebody is doing this, then it's a breach, and they can't be asked questions on that. Instead, they will ask the person who has done that. It's vice versa. So that's why I recommend either you go through the legal bug bounty programs, or if you found any such issues, try to inform the company, and then you can claim your reward and the name and the credit for it. There's no harm in that. You have any other doubts or questions?
Okay, because I have sent vulnerabilities to many companies. Like what they do is like not even a
Mm-hmm.
bounty, not even appreciation. What they do is like they'll just
Mm-hmm.
intimate with their security teams and they'll fix by their internal teams and they'll not even come back to us. So that is why I asked.
Okay. So in these cases, you have the mail documentation, right?
Yes, yes,
So,
yeah.
okay, there is something like you have open source reporting framework where you can create a report, you can send the report, and even then, if the company has not responded to you or not given the bounty, there's we can't say that there is always have to be a bounty on top of it, or they have to reward you in return. But if they're not doing it, if you have a personal blog, you can still I don't say don't recommend to post it, but you can take the company's concern and whether you can report that issue or not. Okay. For example, if you have found somebody has found a Kaspersky vulnerability, okay, and they have responded to Kaspersky, and Kaspersky has fixed it, and they don't want to give the bounty or something, but that person goes onto a blog and just publishes it and makes it viral, saying that, "Hey, I found this issue This was the time. This is how I exploited. This is what the bug was, and now Kaspersky has fixed it. And they still make money out of the blocks. But again, there are a lot of ways to getting recognized and making money. But I generally don't recommend that to my whoever the fellow colleagues or students are, because if you're doing it, you make official report, you keep it with you, and you can claim that or negotiate with that company that this was a critical flaw. Because if they say it was already identified by their internal company, we can't do much, right?
Okay. Yeah, got it. Yeah.
Because they might be saying, no, we already did a vulnerability assessment and we already found this before you. So there are a lot of ways they can, neglect that. I understand. That's why we say better go for the bug bounty programs where you can actually say them that this is what you found and you can claim the reward for it as per the guidelines they have provided. That's why most of the people don't go and do randomly. They go with this HackerOne or Bug so that they could claim the reward legally. And they can't deny that also because they themselves have posted that, right, that you this is open for bounty and that they will pay you certain amount of money if you do it. So that's a legal way of going, and it's all genuine content with all procedures and scope of the agreement. Everything is there in that, so you don't have to worry about anything. Those kind of websites you can trust and you can always count on. So if you find a vulnerability as such, I would definitely recommend see if it is in Bugcrowd or HackerOne somewhere, if they post it for a bounty or if they have a rewarding program in that company for it. If they don't have that, then better don't move with it. That's it. Probably you can use that for yourself.
Okay.
Okay. So this is the website like securitydatabase.com, and like all the different vulnerabilities that you find or exploits that you find, you will find here. So now you have a vulnerability called remote code with vulnerability in server with service could allow remote code execution. It was on 2008 that this vulnerability was released with a score level of 10. And if you see on the right hand side on the screen, here there are different websites which has exploits already available for it. Okay, if you see CVIDs, CPIDs, and Saint exploits or exploit DB exploit, that means for this vulnerability, different people have written different exploits. That means there is more than one way to exploit the same weakness. You understand the point, right? A vulnerability cannot be exploited in always in the same way. There might be more than one way to exploit it, and there are many different researchers or hackers who would have written different exploits for it. So currently, for this particular vulnerability, in different websites, we have found that more than five that is readily available. And this one is called snort rule. Snort rule is nothing but I was mentioning you about a compensatory control. That means if in case you are not able to close this patch in time or Microsoft has not released the patch in time, what you can do is you can get these rules, put it on your firewall. What happens is that any similar attack or any or someone hacker trying to exploit this particular weakness on your system, it will particularly block those kind of attacks because your firewall or what it has is something called behavior analysis. That means it recognizes the patterns how attack happens and then it tries to stop them. So this is having those rules which can predict the pattern of exploiting this particular weakness and it will stop them. So this is kind of a compensatory control you can place until you don't patch the vulnerability. Hope you understood the point, right? So you have a weakness, you have exploits, you can have many different exploits for the same vulnerability. Also, you have a solution which you can use to prevent that attack from happening. So this is a exploit DB initially which I have opened. I don't know what's wrong with Microsoft website. It's not even opening. I'll pick some of the latest vulnerability in Microsoft. Let me see if I can find those details. Maybe because it's too old, they would have removed it from their bulletins. Okay, this score is 9.3. Let me check. This is on 2017. And this is the entire detail about it. And this is a Microsoft bulletin for it. And you see, these are the different platform where this can affect. Vista Server 12 2016, Server 2008, And this is the not IPS and IDS tools which I was mentioning you about, which you can apply to your firewalls. And I think you would have gone through, since you are in the industry, you would have seen there are a lot of ways to find the vulnerabilities through different scanners. So may I know, do you have any experience in looking into those tools such as Nessus, Nexpose, or Qualys?
I yes, in SS I have worked in and for web application scanners we use Burp Suite and all.
Okay. Okay, that's great. So what happens is that there are different types of tools, which I'll showcase you in the next class, how to set up your lab and what are the different tools that you can use. So Nessus is one of such tools which is used for widely for internal vulnerability scanning. So when I mentioned like every vulnerability scanner has its own positives and negatives. So Nessus A is good for internal scanning, and Qualys is good for external scanning, and in terms of Nextpost is another tool which is good for both, but these tools are just based on false positive rate. Okay, so I think because you're in the industry, I'm saying you there are things called false positive, true positive, false negative, and true negative. So have you know the if you know these terms particularly, so helpful for you to understand what is called a false positive when somebody triggers that question. So false positive is something bad, the vulnerability doesn't exist, but you're still getting an alert. Okay, that's so you can download this. This is free of cost for like for free use. You can always use Nessus, but if you want to have a pro version, you can go ahead and purchase it. So Nessus has very low false positive rate. That means it will not show false vulnerabilities when it scans. So hence it is more widely used for internal scanning, whereas it's not as good as that in external scanning. That means a public IP scanning. Qualys does very good in that. So different tools has its own strengths and weakness. And widely used tool again, one more is that Nmap. So this Nessus website, if you are interested to download this, you can always go ahead and download. Nextpose is another tool, but Nextpose uses a lot of RAM, so I don't recommend to download it because it requires minimum 8 GB of RAM to configure and use it, and it's pretty, it's consuming. It consumes a lot of resources as well. So if before you go ahead and install that on your system, be very much aware of the resource that you're spending onto it. The other thing is that Nmap. Nmap is an open source tool, and Nmap has a lot of scripts as well, which is called as NSC scripts. So what it does is Nmap uses a vulnerability scanning application. It's like I said, what it does is it will go ahead and scan a particular IP address or a MAC address that you provide and find out how many information or what are the ports that is open and services that are open. So this is a typical approach how it works in terms of finding a vulnerability or weakness, and these are different tools. So Nessus, Qualys, Nexpose, and Nmap. Okay. When we go for penetration testing, so in vulnerability scanning, our major intention or the only intention is to gather as much as information as possible from these websites. So the websites such as if you want to exploit a Microsoft related vulnerability, and if you pick a server, particularly if it says like, okay, I'm going to exploit 2008 server. So try to find out what are the exploits that are available for 2008 server. Okay, and try to see if there is any particular vulnerability which is already been patched or might not be patched by the company, or what kind of exploit that you can try and what tools you can use. So this is only for a particular system. So in industry, when you see there are a lot of devices. For example, you might have a bare metal and lot of virtual machines running on it. You might have a physical endpoint system. You might have a database. You might have a normal operating system, and you might have network devices such as switches, routers, firewalls. And also you might have other devices which is like maybe the repeaters, or in terms of servers you might have Linux and Windows. In terms of endpoint you might have Windows or Mac. So there are a lot of different variations you can find within the same organization as well. So when you're doing a vulnerability analysis, your only intention is to find out and gather as much information as possible. That's our first motto. Without the information, we will not able to find out what exploit we can run on the system. Okay, so you pick an example tomorrow, like we will take a particular sample and I'll tell you how it works and how it happens. But I would like you to go through the different tools, understand definitions of vulnerability, risk, threat, and also what is a control, and what different type of controls you can place. So when we are trying to attack or trying to use, we have an operating system that we widely use called Kali operating system. Most of you would have heard it, and you might have downloaded on your system to see there are a lot of tools that is given along with it. So it is very good. If you don't have it, I would recommend to use download all these things. I'll provide you a list of tools which you might have to install, so that we could have these tools installed on the system and help you to run these things, and how to use these tools, what are the different tools that you have for different purpose, or how to go further. So you have anybody here who have any experience before, working with Kali Linux or any other, well, like Parrot OS or something?
Kali next to I worked sometime. Yeah.
Okay, that's great. So because this is most widely used, and most of our content that we have here will also help you if you're having any intention to go further and uh, do pursue an OSCP or CES certifications as such. So that will be very helpful as well, because the tools that we're going to use or the scanners that we're going to use, everything is related and aligned in terms of that. Okay. So I will show you a couple of data breach, what happens, okay, in data breach, and how things will happen. Okay, just give me a minute. Okay. Now, may I know how many types of data, or what is the data that you always try to point out in a particular system? Because I already told you data that might differ from industry to industry. So I would like to give you a couple of hints and samples, and I want you to do the research and find out what is this different kinds of data or the crown jewels. So I use this term most often, crown jewels, because this is called the most critical point of the company that company is trying to protect, and that is what we are trying to target on. Okay, and I'll give you a couple of things, but you can make a note, and later you can let me know if you have found additional information. Also, we can share in future class. Okay, I'll just type it on the screen so it will be helpful. Okay, oh here. So we saw what is vulnerability, and we have seen what is definitions so far. We have seen what is a crown jewel, and in this crown jewel, what I'll like to refer you is PII. So have you heard about PII, PCI, HIPAA?
Yeah. Yeah. Standards.
Okay, yeah, these are called standards. The reason they are called standards is because they are designed to protect this information. So PII is nothing but, I'll put it in the bracket, personal information. Okay, and PCI is credit card information, and HIPAA is health information. There might be other data also. Some companies might hold financial data as well. So I'm not putting that because, again, I said it depends on the industry. But these are the most crown jewels that people would always target for. It might be even source code of a company or a product. So, for example, if you have a software and you're trying to have the software as your patented copyright product, and if nobody can duplicate it, for example, but if the source code of the product is leaked, then what happens? Somebody can easily take that blueprint or the source code and generate another software. So this is also one of the crown jewel. So when we are doing a vulnerability assessment, it's quite important and very important to ask the question, what is your crown jewel and what are you trying to protect in your industry? So that you can appropriately find the weaknesses to reach that particular target and exploit and gain access to that information. Okay, if your information is placed somewhere else, and if you are trying to find the vulnerability somewhere else, it doesn't quite coexist at the same time. So when we are doing all this assessment, it's really important for us as a question, try to determine the scope. Okay. If I say what is scope, scope is the area or the environment where we need to do this activity. Okay. And next thing is different types of VAPT. So there are three different types of VAPT. We call it as vulnerability assessment penetration testing, which is black box, gray box, and white box. So white box vulnerability assessment VAPT is done where the company itself says, hey, see, this is my crown jewel, this is my environment or the list of IP addresses, this is my scope where you need to do a testing. They'll tell you information what you have to do and how you have to do it. And they will tell you these are things that you can do and you should not do detailing. So that means the company itself is giving you the information and asking you to exploit. That is a white box. Gray box, a company gives you partial information. They only say, hey, see, this is the range of IP address that I have. Go do whatever you want. Try to find out what information you can get out of it. They'll not tell you like, okay, this is the systems of, there's no much information. They'll only tell you this is the range, this is the IP address range. Do what you can. This is a very limited information that we call gray box because you don't have to get into the organization from an external network and try to travel around all the different networks and IP address to reach a particular spot where you might have a crown jewel placed, but they themselves tell this is where it is. Try to exploit it. Now it's black box. Black box is the most toughest thing where you will not have any clue, any information about the environment. They only say like this is where it is placed. Do what you can or see what you can do for it. So black box is where you should be able to, try to find out the company IP address details, the server details, the range details. Then you have to get into the network, bypass all their firewalls, and get it. Once you get into the network, try to see the different VLANs, navigate through those VLANs, see which systems are alive and down, and then try to exploit each and every system, see what you can get information from that system. So it's very comprehensive and time consuming as well. So white box, that's the most companies ask for white box because it's very time short in time and very crisp, and they can do it for a very short amount of systems so that they can replicate the same issues on all the systems and they can fix it. Gray box, it's again medium time consuming, but also you will have a particular target from where you have to start. You don't have to start from the scratch. Black box, you need to start from the scratch, and also you can find out as much as information as possible, and it will take a lot of tools, patience, and also different analysis methods. Because in black box you not only find out like how we can fetch the data out, there are other parts also. So normally, like if I say, you can get the information even through social engineering, dumpster diving, shoulder surfing, all these different techniques. It's also a vulnerability which companies try to fix it through awareness and training programs. So when I use this jargons, if you're not able to understand, let me know. So if I say it's about war driving or something, war driving is nothing but going near the company with a Wi-Fi analyzer. So see how open networks or Wi-Fi networks are available for the company. It's called war driving. If I say dumpster diving, it is called like if companies have shared some information and put it in the dustbin without shredding properly, it might have some critical or sensitive information. They try to take from that. Shoulder surfing is one such technique where if you see company employees might be working in the bus also, sometimes they're working in the railway station or trains, in the airports. They don't even care what is happening around, but they try to do log into their system and do all those stuff. But somebody standing right behind them can sniff that data out, what he is typing on the screen. This happens typically on mobiles as well, but most of them get aware when they try to cover it, the personal messages in the typing in the mobile, but they leave out the company information when they're trying to log in into the, because they don't think that's quite important. So shoulder surfing is such a technique. It can happen within the company or outside the company as well. So these are different types of attacks, even the black box where it is utilized. So they try to get the information as much as possible to get into a particular system. Okay. And we have seen different scanners, which I would like you to research. And tomorrow I'll give you much more in-depth information once you have tried any one of the tools. So VA scanners that we have in place are Nessus, Qualys, Nexpose, and Nmap. It might be there might be more than these because there are a lot of n number of scanners in the market right now, but these are the major players in the market. Okay, you can use these tools anytime and you can get the information of it. And we have seen different types of vulnerabilities. If you have any doubt with these things, different types of vulnerabilities, let me know. I'll give you a quick overview again so that you can check these details. You can see critical, high, medium, low. And the reference which you are given is security database website. You can check in this website, surf around, try to see if you have a Windows system in your laptop. If you have a Linux, try to see which version you're using and see if there are any vulnerabilities with respect to it. Try to find out much more information, whether it is patched or unpatched, when it is released, if somebody has written any exploits for it, all this information which you can check. All right. So far, you have any doubts with respect to this information?
No.
Okay. So if I'm fast also, please do stop me. Sometimes I get carried away, so I just want to keep you, make sure that so do you like to continue for the next phase?
Okay.
Hello? Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
not able to hear.
Tell me,
Okay.
Manuel. Yeah.
Okay, no problem. Tomorrow. So I'll just give you a heads up with respect to penetration testing and what we do here in penetration testing. So I'll give you a list of downloads so that you can have. So once you have this information with you, we can proceed with installing these tools on the lab. So one thing for penetration testing, I'll give you the links for this. What I need is VMware or VirtualBox. So VMware is also having open source freeware. VirtualBox is also giving you a freeware where you can download and install. And I would recommend for both of them, you should have additional package. So VMware, it will give you VMware tools. Okay. And for VirtualBox, you have additional package. I'll showcase the links. Okay. Which is very much required for you to use from your system to the for your system to communicate with the virtual machine box, or else you can't copy paste the data. It will be difficult to move or enable drivers. Okay, first thing is VMware or VirtualBox, then download Kali Linux. So please check in your system if you have enabled Intel VTX, if it's the Intel processor, so that you can have virtualization enabled. Only if you have virtualization enabled, you can use Kali Linux with 64-bit, or else you can only run Kali 32-bit and it will not run. So we'll have the live lab, showcasing tomorrow. But if you have the tools, if you know how to install, well and good. If not, I'll showcase tomorrow. Once I've installed all the tools on the system, I'll give you a clear picture of it as well. I need Kali Linux, and I want you to download Metasploit table 2. Then download Viata. This is for routers testing and other things. And we want to have any one of a sample operating system. So which one I would suggest Windows 7. Okay. If you don't have Windows 7, you can use Windows XP or Windows 8. So let me know which operating system you're comfortable to use for testing purpose, so we all can work on the same. But this is for sample itself. If you're not finding some experts working on Windows 8, then probably it might work on Windows 7 as well. That's the reason I'm saying, so that you should not have any confusion. But for our purpose, I'm saying Windows 7 Service Pack 1. Then for your configuration,
I would require a minimum operating system of